Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to webinar number 3 of our summer webinar series. My name is Ellen Harrell, and I'm the Executive Director for the Louisiana Grazing Lands Conservation Initiative, and I'm joined here by our Education and Outreach Coordinator, Tara Morris, who has lined up a really great speaker today with the Noble Research Institute.
Yes, and today Jim Johnson and Brooke Gaskamp are going to be talking to us together. Say hi, Jim, and then say hi, Brooke.
Hi, everybody.
Good afternoon.
And we would love for you guys to get started by perhaps just giving us a little bit about, maybe start with Jim, about who you are, what you do for Noble, and then we'll kind of jump into our webinar.
Okay, so I'm Jim Johnson. I've been here at Noble since 1999. Most of that career, I was a soils and crops consultant here at Noble. So I worked with farmers and ranchers every day on all of their soil and crop issues and needs. Most recently, I have been involved with our team that has developed and launched the Essentials of Regenerative Ranching course. And so that's what I've been doing and working with Brooke on that. So Brooke.
Yeah. My name is Brooke Gaskamp. I've been here 9 going on 10 years. I originally started as a project coordinator on a soil health initiative, and then worked my way into actual learning and outreach, which has now become producer guidance, where Jim and I work together to build learning products. And so I worked with Jim to build the Essentials of Regenerative Ranching, which is what we're going to talk about. And my capacity is more on the instructional design. So thinking more about how learning happens, the way that you put learning together in these programs so that the producers that come get the most out of the program.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great. Brooke, do you have a teaching background of any sorts or any kind of, you said learning styles?
Yeah, so I originally worked in extension. I was a county extension agent, and then just came to Noble and have worked in a few different capacities, but mostly outreach and learning.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I have an animal science background. I just found this by way of work, so but I enjoy it a lot.
So if y'all want, could you start by telling us more about who is the Noble Research Institute?
Take it away, Jim.
Sure. So Noble has been around since 1945. We were founded as the Noble Foundation, and so many of you maybe have heard of us over the years as the Noble Foundation. That changed in about 2017 or 18. Some legislation was passed that allowed charitable ag research organizations to be formed. And so Noble Research Institute formed as a charitable ag research organization. So still a nonprofit, just like we always were. It's just that a difference in the tax structure at the IRS really is the only change. And so we work with farmers and ranchers. Our goal is land stewardship in grazing animal production with lasting profitability. There's a couple ways you can say that, a couple ways you may see that, but it's basically the land and grazing livestock and profitability, because obviously if we're not profitable, we don't get to stay on the land and do things to be good stewards of the land. Somebody else gets to come. So you have to have both profit and stewardship. And the tool we use for that is grazing animals.
What a wide variety of things to touch on, really. And that seems to line up a lot about what our organization is doing as well. Do you guys work with the GLCI efforts at all?
Sure. Over the years, yeah, we've done a lot. Several of our staff have been executive board members at NAT GLC. There's lots of us that attend NAT GLC every 3 years when it occurs. So you maybe have seen us there. We're involved in various capacities in our Oklahoma Grazing Council, somewhat even in Texas. Even though we reside in Oklahoma, we are somewhat participating in Texas in a lot of their activities. So yeah, we have a long history and obviously really really good match between the goals of GLC, both at the state level and the national level, and our goals for land stewardship and grazing animals, and the producers that make that all happen.
So you mentioned that your home base is the state of Oklahoma. How for our producers in Louisiana can Noble be a resource, and what is y'all's goal for, is it more of a localized effort, or can people from all over the country benefit from the research being done?
So I'll give you a little history lesson first. Historically, for decades, we did kind of focus on an area roughly 150 miles from Ardmore. Our headquarters is in Ardmore, Oklahoma, south central Oklahoma, 100 miles north of Dallas. And so we focused on an area roughly from Dallas to Oklahoma City, and roughly from Paris, Texas to Wichita Falls, Texas. Over the years, that has shifted and changed and grown. And obviously with technology and multimedia, it's easy to go worldwide even. Our kind of defined boundaries now are nationwide. Our goal is 84,000 producers, and how many acres is it, Brooke? 640 million acres.
164 million.
164. That's good. That's a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot easier. 164 million acres and 84,000 ranchers across the United States. So, U.S. focused. Yes, our offices are here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, but through the miracles of technology, we can reach people all over. Obviously, we have a wealth of information on our website. We have a weekly email newsletter called Noble Rancher that goes out and has a wealth of information in it each week. And in these schools, this is just the first of several that we'll begin offering. This year, we will be in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. But next year, we intend to add a location in Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Colorado, and New Mexico. So we'll just kind of go another layer out.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the essentials of regenerative ranching? What is this new course that you're launching?
All right. So the Essentials program is a 2-day in-person class. Like Jim said, we have 6 locations this year in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. And so those 2 days are spent a little bit in the classroom, a lot of time networking with your peers, and then a good section of time being outside, being hands-on. And the things that we're trying to accomplish in the course is that people learn to monitor and observe the changes in their soil health. And so it's called Essentials. It's meant for anyone. That's why we call it Essentials. A lot of people want to say, well, it seems like a beginner thing, but really Essentials are for everyone. And so the monitoring piece is the biggest takeaway from the course. You're going to learn about soil health principles. You're going to learn about ecosystem processes, some tools to get started integrating livestock, some tools in getting started in your financial records and understanding why those are important to make decisions later on. Talk about things like limiting factors to changing your operation and changing your soil health, and how to get around those limiting factors. And like I said, then there's a huge outdoor portion with multiple ways to monitor and measure the ways that your soil is changing, and how that turns into profitability and livestock and livelihood changes. Stop using my hands. I speak with my hands. I'm sorry.
That's great because we can see your hands, so that's wonderful. Brooke, the profitability part is fascinating to me because we hear a lot about soil health, but that profitability part seems to get left out of the equation by a lot of people. I would love to hear how you guys are touching on that. I know that's off of our question base a little bit, but please tell us more about how you guys are touching on that profitability part within the course.
Yeah, I'll start and you can fill in if I miss something. But really the basics are that the things when you think about the soil health principles, that you need to cover the soil, that you need living roots, that you're not having disturbance when you start thinking about those things and you start thinking about, well, maybe I need to spray less, or maybe I shouldn't use fertilizer. When you start taking away, the first thing is some of those inputs or using them less. That's kind of the first step into thinking about profitability is where am I spending my money? How is it affecting my soil for the good or the bad? And then how does that actually work into my profitability and into my business? And so that's really where we kick the class off, is thinking about where am I spending my money? Do I even keep track of where I'm spending it? And then how do those following those soil health principles allow me to take away some of those expenditures? Want to fill in?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah. Where can we save money? We all know, we've seen what the price of fertilizer have done. We've seen what the price of all the other inputs have done. They just keep going up and they're not getting any better. And the margin and the profit for all of our producers just gets narrower and narrower. And so we're looking at ways we can save. We're looking at ways we can make more money. And we touch on that a little bit in class, is how can we make more money from our profit, from our product? Maybe it's more direct marketing, maybe it's adding different enterprises. But the key to all of that is going to be keeping just some basic financial records that none of us like to do. I mean, we're in agriculture because we like to be outside doing things. We don't like to be inside pushing a pencil necessarily. And so we go through some just basic records that you need to have. So, you know, one, what your revenue is, and two, what your expenses are, so that you can have a real good idea of what your profit really is. And then maybe from having those records of what your revenue is and what your expenses are, okay, what are some areas we can adjust? What are some areas that we can make some changes to either increase revenue or decrease expenses? And we've got a tool that the participants will be able to leave with. It's just a real simple spreadsheet that they can leave with to start tracking some of these things, to get real data and be able to really make some impact on their operation financially.
How unique. That sounds really, really unique, and sound like something that I haven't heard of personally as a producer before. Now that anyone is putting out there in one piece. You hear about pieces and parts, but not all in one place. How did you guys research the the need for this? How did you come to the need for this course?
Well, like I said, you know, we see economic uncertainty with prices. A lot of times we don't have any control over what the price is. And we see that. We see weather uncertainty. The weather, we could argue it a lot of ways, but the weather seems to be getting more extreme. Droughts more frequent, floods more frequent, bigger floods, longer droughts. And so we see those, that economic uncertainty, the weather uncertainty, and we see the social challenge of our producers of being unsure of what the next step is. Maybe there's a lot of anecdotal basis out there for doing some of these things, but sometimes it's hard to have some hard facts and figures to back it up. And so that's kind of where we started putting this course together, is what will help producers overcome these challenges.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we try to think about is what are the problems facing the producers today and how can we help them find solutions. And a lot of what we focused on in building the program is not just to provide more information, but how can we give knowledge and skills that allow producers to come and then take it home and actually do something. And then how do they translate these things into the next decision that they have to make or the next problem that they have to solve? So we really tried to focus in that area when putting this together, rather than just think about, okay, well, what information do they have to know? We tried to put the whole thought process together for them.
So I know y'all mentioned this being an essentials workshop. It's for anyone kind of across the spectrum of a new rancher to a seasoned producer. But is there kind of an ideal individual to take this course? Is it required for someone to be all in for regenerative ranching? Is it okay if you're just trying to figure out what that means? Who is your target audience?
I'd say it's not to turn anyone away, but we are focused on people that are interested in regenerative concepts and the soil health principles. And so we don't spend a lot of time in the beginning talking about why you should be regenerative and the benefits of just being regenerative. We really get into the meat of things and start talking about the things that you have to consider. And so I think as long as you're interested in regenerative, or even if you're already bought in, that works. And like we talked about, I don't think there's a one size fits all as far as size of producer or age or anything like that. All of these principles work, whether you're seasoned or whether you're new. And so it's really about if you're invested in trying to learn more about being regenerative.
Yeah, I think you could be any age, any size. You could be a first generation rancher or a fifth generation rancher. I think it will apply, but definitely folks who are interested in regen and want to go farther in regen. So that could be somebody that hasn't done anything regen yet, but they're very, very interested. Or it could be somebody that's already very regenerative and just wants to get to the next level. But folks that maybe have practiced a little bit will maybe really get a lot out of this. Everybody will, but they might get the most out of it. Folks that have practiced a little bit and want to go to the next step. You do probably need to be familiar with ranching. If you've just left your job in town as a doctor or lawyer and just bought your first ranch and maybe don't know what a steer is different from a heifer, or maybe don't know the difference between a stocker and a cow, you might be a little behind. It wouldn't mean that you couldn't take this course, but you might struggle keeping up with just some of the terminology that we all use in ranching that's kind of our own language, and outsiders may be a little behind on the terminology.
That's what I was about to ask Jim about, what about beginning ranchers and people just starting out? I think surely it would be a good place to start as well and to network. I would think even for a beginner, it never hurts to meet people and
Absolutely.
network and
Absolutely.
right foot.
Just might be a little challenge keeping up with some of the terminology. We do have a workbook that everybody gets. And in the back of that workbook, we've put together a pretty exhaustive glossary. So that would help somebody that maybe isn't as familiar with some of it. We have a glossary in that workbook, and certainly plenty of time to interact with the others that are at your table, and plenty of time to ask questions during the course. So please don't be shy to come. No matter who you are. We think if you're interested in regen, you'll gain a lot from this course.
And if you're interested in networking, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to throw in within the course. A lot of times you think that you'll come and you're just going to sit and listen, but we've intentionally put a lot of group work. There are activities. There's intentional ways to network with your peers. So it's more about just the content. We actually give you examples. We give you tools. To Jim's point, there's an economic tool to start your bookkeeping, and there's a monitoring tool that we give. So a lot of the intentionality is built into the course to get you networking and talking at your table through group discussions, and then larger group discussions throughout the day too, and teamwork in the field.
And we've had folks I was just going to say, we've had folks that aren't even producers. We've had real estate agents come and take this course, but they're selling ag land, and we're very interested in what regenerative ag can do to improve the land.
That's wonderful. And I'm assuming not just cattle ranchers. I'm assuming, do y'all address all species, multi-species? Is it mostly cattle based?
We do talk about other livestock. Obviously, cattle are probably the most familiar with most of us, but we do talk a little bit about small ruminants. We do touch just briefly on poultry. We talk about even agritourism. Maybe it's bird watching or stargazing. But the primary focus of the animal will be grazing animals, and we're obviously going to be the most familiar with ruminant grazing animals. Doesn't mean we might not talk about pigs or chickens, but we're going to talk the most probably about ruminant animals.
So with there being such diverse practices and needs across the United States, do you see this course changing from as you start to spread out locations? Is this course going to change based on the area it's being offered in?
So really, no. And the reason for that is because we focus on principles. We focus on the soil health principles. We focus on ecological processes, and those occur and apply the same everywhere, whether you're in Montana or Florida, California or Maine. Now, the practices you might implement on your ranch to cover the soil or to maximize the water cycle may be different. But even within Louisiana, the practice on two ranches that are right next door to each other will probably be different of how they apply the principles. So we really focus on the principles and the ecosystem processes, the things that are universal. And once you really get a good grasp on them, then you can implement whatever practices you need to. I like to think about it like a good chef. You know, if a good chef really knows how ingredients work together, if they have a recipe and they don't have one of the ingredients, they know how to substitute in a different ingredient. And I think that's kind of how it is. If you know the soil health principles and the ecosystem processes, you can substitute in practices that work for you and that are available for you, that match your resources, that match your financial capability, your skill set, your knowledge, your willingness, your time, all of those things.
That's also another important part of the peer networking while you're there is, you know, region to region, those people that are with you in that class are going to have important information, important experiences that we can share within the course also. And then with the course, you get a virtual check-in, which the cohort that you go through the class with, 1 month following the class, we'll send out a Zoom link, and the whole course will have, or the whole class will have the whole opportunity to get back together with the facilitator and all of their classmates. And we'll really have another opportunity to talk about, well, what have you tried and what barriers have you faced? And, you know, when you tried that, what happened? And here's what I did as my first step. And so I think that virtual check-in allows for some of that regionality too. And then hopefully we're intentionally building some of those relationships. In the couple of courses that we've kind of piloted for this and had some groups go through this, many of them have stayed together. And when we've asked them about, are you contacting, you know, your cohort peers, the majority of them are saying, yes, you know, I've got their phone number, I've got their email. And when they're having those regional differences, they're contacting those other producers in their area that can really help them because they're boots on the ground doing the same thing as they are.
Yeah, this all sounds really amazing. I would say, you know, if people are interested in signing up, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, maybe a price point, and what does that include?
Sure. So if you go to our website, noble.org/essentials, or even if you go to noble.org, it's the big banner at the top. It'll say learn more. You can click there. Once you click in, it'll show you all the locations. And you can pick which location works best for you. When you go to register, there are two options. There's our basic package, which is $650. It gets you the 2-day course. It gets you all of the tools like the workbook, a list of all the supplies that you could go home and order, a USB full of resources, and it gets you that 1 month check-in with your cohort and your facilitator. We have an essentials package, which has all the things we just talked about. Plus, you can sign up to get 6 times to attend our Rancher to Rancher. And it's basically a monthly webcast where anyone who's purchased that package can log in that day. We'll have a topic at hand and we'll just talk about it peer to peer. We'll talk about that topic. We'll help facilitate that conversation. That's where you might talk about multi-species grazing, and peer-to-peer can talk about things that, you know, problems that they're running into or fencing that they've tried to keep goats in, all those different things. And also the other piece of that essentials package is a virtual coaching session. And so you'll get a 45-minute session that you can schedule with any of our with our coaches. And it's meant to be kind of reinforcement of what you've learned. So you've got home, you've done the virtual check-in. Now you're really getting to trying things. You've hit a barrier. You've had some successes and you want to go to the next level. You have that 45-minute conversation where you can virtually check in with one of our coaches and see what your next step could be or how to get through the thing that's really keeping you from going to the next step.
And just to
And that-
follow to
Okay.
that, since this is a question I always wonder, as well as just going through event planning, this question always comes up. Through registering, are the participants responsible for booking their own lodging activities and or meals in the evenings, or is that all part of the package?
So the package is just those things. We have hotel blocks. When you register, you'll get information of, where we have a hotel block. A lot of our courses are not at a hotel, so the actual location is listed of Tarleton or at Tarleton State or Northeast Community College. So you'll actually meet at the location. The hotel will just be, for your lodging. We will have social time for certain locations, and then otherwise it's just the daily meals, not an evening meal.
And I think Brooke, you mentioned that this is going to be, there are going to be coaches and instructors. Who are those people that are going to be the coaches, instructors, and the people, how many people per class are going to be involved? What's kind of the teacher to student ratio and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. So our first class is Jim and another coach, Mike Porter. And so it will vary from location to location. But we have a core set of coaches that all have this material that they're presenting. And then we have up to 40 spots for participants.
So it could be as many as 20 learners per facilitator. But if there's only 20 people that show up, now it's only 10 learners per facilitator. So I expect there'll be plenty of interaction with the facilitators. And like Brooke said, I'll be facilitating several, Mike Porter, several, Steve Swaffer, several, Will Mosley and Stephen Smith. That makes out the 5 facilitators for this essentials class. And there'll always be 2 of us there.
Yep.
And our backgrounds is we've all been consultants here at Noble. We talk about facilitators and coaches and guides, but you may have heard us called consultants here at Noble for years. Before we were consultants, we were called specialists. I was a soils and crop specialist before I was a soils and crop consultant, but I did the same thing. So all of us have years of experience in resource management, whether that's ecology or soils or crops or wildlife, water, livestock, econ, all of those things.
Yeah, I know. From what I've heard, I believe one or both of you are producers yourselves. Am I wrong on that?
Both of us are. Brooke's a little more
Okay.
active than I am right now, though.
So from that producer point of view, what's the most exciting part of this program for you?
You're on camera first.
No, you're on camera, Brooke.
Thanks, Sean. So for me, I think it is just for me, it was the access to people first, because we are fairly new to the type of producer that we are. We're raising sheep, and I grew up on a cow-calf ranch and row crop. So we're dabbling in sheep, and it's a whole new thing. So the more people I can meet and learn from, so I really enjoy the peer aspect. As far as the content, I really like the tools. The idea of monitoring and being able to say, this is where my soil health started, because we bought land that was pretty degraded. It had been overgrazed for years. So having a tool in my toolbox where I can easily go out and start to find some easy wins that I can capture and see on that tool, and then see over time that we are progressing to keep that momentum going. Because in complete honesty, I mean, I work here full time too. So my husband has a full-time job too. So keeping the motivation to keep doing all the hard work and the long hours when it's got to fit in around all the other things and small children that I have. I think that monitoring really is motivational to keep it in front of you and show that the hard work is worth it.
And for me, it's evolved over time as we started developing this, and I still am excited about the ecosystem processes. I mentioned I was a soils and crops consultant, and so I worked in introduced crops, introduced forages. And so we were very much in the input side of things, or at least I was. And I actually had no ecology classes in college. I could tell you everything there was about inputs and what you poured out of a jug or a bag, but nothing about the ecology. And so that really was the most exciting thing to me, and still excites me a lot about the course. But I think what is going to be one of the bigger takeaways for me on our ranch, my wife and I, is going to be the monitoring the land, monitoring the soil cover, erosion, plant diversity, some of the soil tests that we take, organic matter and aggregate stability. I think those are going to really help me to make some decisions. We all see things when we go out to the ranch and know we should do better. But when you start, at least for me, collecting that hard data and you see, man, I've got 30% bare ground in this pasture. I have got to do something different in this pasture. I think that really will make the biggest impact on our land.
And I know that you guys are probably familiar with this concept. We hear more and more about carbon and the records needed for carbon as well. Have you guys played with that option as part of this course at all?
We don't focus on carbon at all, but we do encourage our students to take a Haney test and a soil organic carbon test. Those are some of the things that we encourage monitoring annually. And so those could be beneficial at some point in time if somebody does get involved in carbon, to have those records, those historic records of organic matter and all the other things that Haney tests, as well as the soil organic carbon records of your soil.
Yeah, I know that was a little off of our thought process on this webinar, but it just kind of came to me that from what I understand, super records are what are needed the most whenever you're working with a carbon company. And as we're in that kind of wild west of carbon contracts coming down the line, it's going to be a more and more needed thing to keep good records. And it sounds like a great starting point for you guys, but also a different direction and ways to really measure your soil health for your own purposes, from what I'm understanding.
Right. And for me, and I think a lot of our peers, carbon's important and it could be a potential revenue source for us. But for me, being resilient to drought and floods, and that's one of the benefits we get from better soil carbon, is that resilience to drought and floods. That's way more valuable to me than I think a carbon program ever will be.
Well, and I know that we have talked a little bit about other programs. You guys just kind of halfway mentioned to me that you're going to have some other programs coming down the line. You said next year you're releasing this in some locations in Louisiana, as well as some other southern areas, right?
Yes. Yeah, so
what,
Oklahoma, Texas,
Yeah.
Kansas this year. Starting in the next year, we can add Arkansas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Missouri, and Colorado. So we're always looking for locations in Louisiana. So if there's people that are listening with ideas or interest, feel free to shoot us a message, connect with us, because we will be into the next year expanding, and then hopefully after that, expanding more into the next year. So just kind of taking it layer by layer. And then as far as new programming for next year, so we're currently working on a grazing program that is focused more on grazing livestock. And the other product that we're going to put a lot of effort into this year is on profitability. So it'll be business based. And a lot of those are fairly early in their development. So I can't give a whole lot of details just because they're not all there yet, but something focused on business and profitability and keeping track of your business to work towards those profitability goals. And same with grazing, how to meet your grazing goals using regenerative principles.
That's some pretty exciting stuff coming down the line.
Yeah.
And a lot of expansion. So after the Louisiana, Arkansas second year efforts, do you think this expansion will continue on into further states, nationwide, internationally? Do you guys have plans for international at all?
Right now, we're sticking with nationwide, and I think we'll kind of take it in a stepwise approach. Just kind of like we're doing now, just kind of keep adding layers to the geography that we're working in. Some of the programs will be more regional specific than others. Like I said, Essentials is the principle, so it's meant for anyone. The others may need tweaks depending on how they're designed, so we're working through that. But the intention is to be nationwide with everything that we do. And that does mean that we're working on being more online also. So that's in the work in the background too, of how we can get more resources and more things online to reach people that way also.
Great. What about our audience? What in the audience, who has questions? You can either put it in the chat or you can just unmute and speak up. You guys have done such a good job explaining everything. How do you guys have time to create this program and do all the things that you were doing before?
Well, we've refined our focus. So that's one thing that has been different is we're basically creating these products and recreating the portfolio of products that we offer. And so this is kind of the first regenerative product that we have. And so a lot of the things that we used to do historically have taken a pause, and we've really taken a look at how can we actually restructure what we used to do and what producers need, and put those into the products that producers are asking for or that they need in their regenerative journey. So we're busy people.
Very.
There's lots going on. But we have set some priorities in trying to get these products out so that we can start reaching producers.
And how did you get your market research done as far as what producers need? Where did you guys gather that information?
We pulled from a few different resources as far as like some data repositories that were available, but we did just some group surveys. We brought some groups in and asked them questions. We've tried to keep the producer first and foremost in a lot of this design by involving them in the design of the product. The Essentials group, we actually had a group of 5 producers that helped us develop the program. So they reviewed stuff for us. They came to the first time we ever delivered it and gave us feedback. And then we did a second iteration of delivering the program to a different set of producers. So we've been trying to include the producer along the way so that we aren't missing the mark.
So please still feel free to put questions in the chat or chime in. But where is the best place for our audience to find you?
Probably the best place is www.noble.org. And like Brooke said, on the very front page, the first thing that pops up will be this Essentials of Regenerative Ranching course. And so they can find more information about it there and where the next locations and when the next locations will be offered. And we'll keep adding to that as we add more to the calendar. But there's just a lot of other information there on our website. They can sign up again for our weekly newsletter email called Noble Rancher. Probably the easiest way to do that is at the bottom of the Essentials of Regenerative Ranching page. There's already a box to fill in to put your information to learn more. And there's a little small checkbox that says, yes, sign me up for Noble Rancher. So that's probably the easiest way to sign up for that. There's a search icon on the website in the top right-hand corner of the noble.org page. It looks like a little magnifying glass. And so if you click on that little magnifying glass, you can type in all kinds of topics, cover crops or goats or fence or water. And all of the articles that we have on that topic will pop up there to be able to read those.
We also have social media. So if you're into Facebook, Instagram, those sorts of things, you can catch us on social, and YouTube. If you're looking for more videos, you can find us there too. Jim himself.
I think we're on every platform. I think we're on all the social media platforms. So whichever one's your preference, you should be able to find us there. Noble Research Institute.
As well as you have a very beautiful print magazine that I just got in the mail a couple weeks ago. So I always get excited when that one comes in.
Thank you. You must be referring to Legacy. Legacy is it comes out 3 or 4 times a year, and it's full of all the things that we're doing.
So for the people that are on that may not be subscribed to your information already, can you tell us about that extra stuff? Is it producer stories of just people that you find, or is this research you're doing through Noble yourselves, or where did those expertise and topics come from?
It's all of the above. Obviously we've worked with thousands of producers over the years and have those relationships and continue to meet new people all the time. But one thing that maybe makes Noble a little bit unique and sets us apart from some others is we actually have 7 ranches, 14,000 acres of ranch land on 7 acres, 7 ranches, 14,000 acres across 7 ranches in southern Oklahoma, Carter, Marshall, and Love County. And so we learn a lot from our own ranches of things that we try and work, and some things we try and don't work so well. So we gain a lot of our content there on our own ranches.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I did get a message from Paul asking, do y'all do any programs regarding forestry?
Historically, we have not really done anything with forestry. Again, land stewardship and grazing animal production for profitability. We do have some work that we're in pecans. For us, a lot of times we can graze under those pecans for a good portion of the year and kind of have a 2-story enterprise or a stacked enterprise there. So that might be the closest we are to forestry is grazing under pecan trees.
Any other questions from our audience? Well, we do have a giveaway for those that have logged into the live session. So I'm going to pull that up really quickly. Our first giveaway will be for one of our Louisiana Grazing Lands t-shirts. And that will go to Paul. So Paul, if you can stay on, I will get your size and address and we will mail that to you. And then our second giveaway is a pair of pliers. And that looks like it's going to Brian. So congratulations. And thank you to everyone that came to the live session. Please be ready. We'll send a follow-up email in a couple of hours that will have a survey for your feedback. It is really helpful for us for our grant that sponsors this whole webinar series, as well as there will be a link to the recording that will be posted to our YouTube page. So if you want to share this program with family and friends, you can just send them the link so that they can learn all the details from Noble themselves. So we really appreciate the time today. Thank y'all for this exciting new course, and we're looking forward to hopefully sending some attendees out, as well as maybe helping host when it comes to Louisiana next year. We'll stay on for a few more minutes for further questions, but with that, Y'all have a great afternoon.
Sure. While we wait, I'll just say one of our locations this year is in Mount Pleasant, Texas, which is kind of East Texas, so might not be too far for some folks to drive over from Louisiana to Mount Pleasant, Texas for that. And that's going to be August 15th and 16th. And it'll be at Northeast Community College in Mount Pleasant, Texas, August 15th and 16th. We also, I think it's on the books, we plan to have one in Ardmore, October 30th, 31st, October 31st and November 1st. And so if you've always wanted to come to Ardmore, that might be your option. Drive from Louisiana to Ardmore to that school. Those are probably the two closest to Louisiana for this year.
And I just want to put in a plug also. So you guys, for this program, is noble.org to get signed up for this. We also have our internal events going on. We have a bus trip coming up. Our registration is closed for that, but we're excited to be going over to Alabama to see the BDA farm, hosted with Alan Nation. No, Alan Williams. Thank you, Alan Williams. And then we have another webinar series next week and the week after, and that will conclude our 5-part webinar series. And we have a pasture walk at Wedge and Sammy Barth's coming up on July 25th. That's a Tuesday evening, including some dinner. And then we have some exciting stuff coming for fall that we're planning right now. So lots going on our end as well. And you can keep track of us by getting our emails. If you go to louisianaglci.org and sign up on the Stay in Touch tab, it will sign you up for our emails to keep an eye on. And you can also follow us on social media. Jim, Brooke, fabulous job today. We really appreciate your time and efforts to prepare for this, and Lori's as well, and you and everyone at your team to have put all this together and to be with us and spend some time letting our people know about this. I think this will be a great, it's at least a help for getting the word out for Louisiana next year.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.